Hey guys, so welcome to this Digital Growth Masters in collaboration with Huawei panel discussion online. Thank you guys for being here today. I have Huawei's Chief Digital Transformation Officer, Edwin Diender. Hi, Edwin.
Hey.
I've got the incredible Ralph Echemendia, top cybersecurity expert, aka the ethical hacker. Hey, Ralph.
How you doing?
And we also have, directly from Germany, we've got a Mike Flache, entrepreneur and angel investor. Hey, Mike.
Hi, Elise. Hi, guys.
Okay, so we're going to have some amazing questions to talk about the value of emerging technologies in the new era. Now, the first question is going to go to you, Edwin. The new decade is here, and now more than ever, it's very important to find new ways to drive innovation and increase value. So what are some of the emerging technologies that right now Huawei is investing in?
Well, you said we should be very short and punctual in our answers. But your question is quite wide. The easy answer would be, what are we not investing in, or what are we not innovating for, right? Let me start with our mission statement. Our mission statement says that we want to bring digital to every person, home, and organization. And digital means everything. So one of the things that we talk about is the underlying architecture and the underlying infrastructure that is able to carry the possibility to really bring digital to every person, home, and organization. Things like artificial intelligence that sits within this underlying infrastructure, the things like sensory networks, the Internet of Things, big data analytics, and so on. And then to the devices that people are carrying. And then very, very small and very, very tiny, all these chipsets and computing power and processors that are sitting within all these devices. So across the board, there is a lot of technology that goes back and forth and that enables to bring digital to every home, person, and organization. And that's where Huawei invests in, and that's where Huawei innovates for.
Wow, it is incredible. I believe that there are a lot of people that think that Huawei only manufactures smartphones, and Huawei does so much more. And you've just given us an overview on that. So thank you so much for that, Edwin. Now, I've got one question for you, Ralph. As the cybersecurity expert that you're all about privacy and data protection. And as we know, data is becoming one of the biggest assets for everybody. So one of the emerging technologies that continues to come up is blockchain. What does blockchain mean to you? What are your thoughts on this technology?
Oh, well, blockchain is, it really is nothing more than another mechanism of logging, which, that's a very important aspect of most transactions of any kind, whether financial or not. So that there are places where blockchain fits, and there are places where blockchain doesn't fit. Obviously, anything that is financial transactions, it fits. In other areas like healthcare, it's something that's very important too, where blockchain would be something that brings value and more transparency to some of the processes involved. So it's not something that's for everything. For example, implementing blockchain in certain existing systems that have to do with authorization may make sense, and in other cases it doesn't make sense because it really hits performance of these systems. So I think it's a very powerful thing that we're not quite using enough yet, especially within those industries like healthcare and others that could be using it. But it is certainly a technology that we should be implementing in certain areas more and more.
Thank you so much for that. Now, when we talk about value, this is going to go over to you, Mike. We talk about that assessing the value of emerging technologies is about business benefits and risks. So how can companies actually do this, and why do companies need to embrace emerging technologies?
Yeah, Yeah, good question, Elise. So the importance of technology to today's business strategy, and of course in the future, is huge. But it depends on the phase of the company. For example, we can divide it into three categories. We have first the beginners. They're at an early stage of their digital journey. We have secondly the immediates. They are progressing toward real business transformation. And we have the category of the advanced companies that are using digital ecosystems to disrupt their markets. So for all of them is the biggest challenge, and from a CEO or CFO point of view, we need also a shift of mind, and why we need a shift of mind. Because normally CEOs and CFO prefer to see the signs of a positive ROA, return on investment in the future, and innovators do differently. Of course, the signs of a positive ROE are also important, but they have a different tech investment approach. They foster experimentation to unlock real customer value through emerging technologies. And this is the biggest difference I see.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Mike. It's definitely interesting to know, the value that is bringing to business. We come from, most of us grew up without technology, so we know what it takes to do things without the internet, without being online. And now there is many businesses, and I know, Mike, you deal with this in pretty much on a daily basis. People that come from a very basic, old school fashioned way, and they do not understand the true value of what technology is going to do for them, which actually brings me to talk a little bit about smart cities. And this comes to you now, Edwin, because smart cities are becoming more crucial than ever for humanity. But I think it's still a very big buzzword in regards to what a smart city actually means, and how can technologies actually impact and develop a city becoming into a smart. So can you tell us from this Huawei perspective, some of the technologies such as 5G or artificial intelligence, and how Huawei is developing and deploying some of them to create a smart city?
Sure, I can, and I will. But let's find a definition for smart first, if you don't mind. So I'm not gonna give it now. You can go to Google, or you can go to the Oxford Dictionary, or you can go to the Ola Britannica, or you can find a definition of smart. And I'm sure whatever definition you find, you will also find that it really does not fit a city at all. Someone can look smart, for example. Now, does a city look smart like that? Someone can be smart dressed. Do you know of any city that is smartly dressed? That kind of thing. So I don't think smart city really cuts it, to be honest. I get it where it comes from. It's a very good label. It's a very good concept and a very good principle. It appeals to the imagination, but not to mine in this particular case. I would prefer to go forward with intelligent cities, or intelligently connected city, that kind of space. If you then think about what comes to mind and what kind of technology provides, elements or programs or initiatives that go on within a city and that will help an area or a city itself, or maybe even the whole nation, move higher up the value chain, then I think what a smart city or what an intelligent city is a platform. A city is a platform that is able to link the different programs and initiatives that allows that city or that area of a city to move higher up the value chain. And there is many examples of programs and initiatives that do that, and do not necessarily need to be technologically driven at the start. Eventually, technology comes in to facilitate, to make it more intuitive, to make it more integratable, if you like. There are many examples now, specifically with the pandemic worldwide, where the element of artificial intelligence actually now comes in. Artificial intelligence in healthcare, computing power that can search through and that can see scans of lungs, for example, of MRI scans or X-rays of lungs that the human eye needs to do by itself, only one by one, but computing power and AI can do that faster and can present it in such a way that diagnosis becomes more accurate. That would be an example. Another example where Huawei sits in this particular part is not only on that side of the equation, but also with components in smartphones, for example. There are services out there that run on a smartphone that will help children who are deaf to read children's books. Story Sign is the app that I'm aiming for, and that makes not only use of the camera of the phone, but also the chipset within the phone, the computing power behind it, the connectivity that that sits around us, where your camera looks at a page and then there's a little avatar presented that speaks sign language to do that. Other examples are where the camera itself can be used for diagnosis of the retina of an eye, for example, to help understand with children where it is very difficult to understand whether their eyes are going backwards very fast, so to speak. And usually when you go to a specialist, it's a little too late already, rather than maybe now having computing power, AI technology, chipsets combined in the camera of a smartphone. And this is the part that I think is really important. The camera of a smartphone can do that, can already give information about the retina of an eye of a child to faster and earlier understand in the process of decline that a specialist needs to look at it. I think that is where elements of programs and initiatives, examples of very small and tiny pieces together create something that we could think of an intelligent society. And part of a society, of course, are cities, a network of cities. I think these are some examples of it.
That's incredible, Edwin. And I'm actually going to do a quick follow-up on this because you brought a perfect point when you were just talking about the cameras and, for example, some of those projects, which are, for example, Story Sign or Dive Medical, the one you were talking about, the children. When I met you in Shanghai a few months ago, I think we spoke about the AI-enabled cameras. And I wanted to know if you could tell everyone the story about how those cameras actually helped save the life of a child. Because we're not just talking about, like you said, what is a smart city? What are these technologies doing? We're talking about actually tech for good, actually technology that can save lives. And I think this is how the average person, somebody that is not an analyst, somebody that is not a cybersecurity expert, can actually truly understand what are these technologies mean in real life. So could you tell us a little bit about that case that I'm talking about, the one that, how did that happen?
Well, I think I remember the one that you referred to. So let me give you the story here. At some point in one of the cities in China, there was a mother at a fresh market who found out that her little daughter was gone. And like every mother's worldwide, gets in panic, starts shouting, talking to people. And at one point, it was clear that the kid was gone. So police comes in. So I'm going to make a long story short. The police was able to find the child, I think nearly 1,100 kilometers away in another city within less than a day. I think even less than 12 hours, so less than half a day. Because different pieces of technology, different data sets of technology, different services combined were working together in such a way, almost automatically, that by using a picture of the child that the mom had, that was given to the police officer at the fresh market, the police officer was able to take that picture, put it into his smartphone, from the smartphone, upload it to a system. This system then went into a database, and this database started searching. We're looking for a child with these credentials, and find it from the moment that we think it was lost at this fresh market, and then reason it back or track and trace it to where it is now, all the way to the point where it was captured at one point at a train station, at the ticket office or the box office to buy a ticket. Then it could be captured again from the CCTV camera in the train, in what cart, what segment of the cart of the train was the child sitting with the person who had took the child. And then before the train reached the destination, again, 1,100 kilometers away from where the child was reported missing, police was waiting for them at the platform, at the right doors of the right train station, at the right, the right cart, and so on and so forth. But to be honest, I also don't think this is a very good example, because this tries to explain perhaps why it is important to have cameras. And I don't think that's the importance of this. The importance of this is not to have cameras. The importance of this is to have a system and services that is capable of integrating these different silos that today don't work together. And the only way they work together today is by a manual handoff, or one person calling another and reading what is in a screen number one out loud on the phone to someone else that needs to write it down first, and so on and so forth. The importance here is that there is a digital platform and horizontal layer of converged mobile and broadband and fixed pieces of technology that work together in such a way that it becomes faster to do something very simple. Here's a picture of a child. It has a red t-shirt, blue jeans, it has a cap with a certain logo on it, it wears a backpack or whatever. This is it. And just find me that simple part. I think that's the important part of it.
That's actually, to be honest, that answer is quite mind-blowing. And I think that anybody listening to this will agree that that's actually what matters. What can these technologies do? And you made a great point. It is important to have these systems in place, which now brings me to you, Ralph, because when these new emerging technologies come in, when we put these systems in place and all this data is available, one of the biggest questions is cybersecurity. How are we protecting things? So from an overall perspective, what is the biggest factor that everybody need to be aware of when it comes to the importance of cybersecurity in technologies such as artificial intelligence or 5G?
Well, I think the issue is that we're still defining the for example, what is privacy? We keep throwing around the word privacy as if we actually knew what we were talking about. That has not been defined on a global scale. We can define privacy, and we have defined privacy in a physical space to a degree. For example, it's very cultural too, right? So we talk about this all of this data out there in so many different systems. And so with 5G and AI, the importance of that data being shared is even more paramount than it is right now. Take, for example, smart cars, right? The importance of 5G and AI to certain technologies, like the emergence of using, driverless vehicles, is like I said, paramount. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. And that means that cars need to be able to communicate with each other, not go up to the internet, up to the cloud and back, because that takes time, and milliseconds matter when these cars can crash into each other. So there's a sharing of data that needs to happen, of certain pieces of data. And, I think our concern is that this data then becomes a risk. And so the issue is that we need to better understand and come to terms with, define the terms of what we're okay with versus what we're not okay with. And there are certain elements of cybersecurity that you might be okay with and that I might not be okay with. And so that kind of choice doesn't exist right now. From a consumer perspective, even from a enterprise perspective, we don't really fully understand what data is going out there and being available and what data is not. And we really don't have much of a choice about it. So it's a matter of better understanding what exactly are we talking about, and are we okay with that happening, with that kind of data exchange taking place, so that we can have a more convenient world. Because there is a price to pay for convenience, and that price typically has to do with privacy.
Thank you so much for that, Ralph. And you bring actually a great point, is getting to understand what a lot of these words means, such as privacy or what data protection. A lot of for you, obviously, this is quite normal. For the average person that is being told you need to embrace 5G, you need to embrace artificial intelligence, you need to embrace all of this that is coming, they don't even actually know. So obviously, from my perspective, education is a huge part of this. And Ralph, I have a follow-up question on this, because you've just mentioned we need to understand more. And I remember a couple of years ago, we shared the stage, and you said that the cybersecurity industry continues to be one of the only industries in the world with zero unemployment rate. Do you really think the world is ready from a cybersecurity perspective to take on everything that's happening? Because we're moving at such a fast pace, but we don't seem to have enough cybersecurity people that can actually put into play the strategies, that can actually, put the strategies for data protection, for example. What is your prediction for this at the moment?
Well, the truth is we're never going to. We've already passed that threshold of computers to, back in the day when I started professionally in the IT industry, I think it was maybe 20 or 30 computers in an enterprise to, one administrator or one network engineer. That number is now in the thousands, and there's just no way to keep up. There's not enough people in the world to be able to have a factor of, for every 100,000 computers, you have one IT security specialist overseeing that. So that's not going to change no matter how quickly we can train up. Things like AI and automation in general, machine learning can certainly help to a degree, but it also, within the implementation of those technologies, opens up for other risks too. So I think we're going to continue to see it. I used to put it in that, the one way that I like to put it is that the cybersecurity is now sort of a 13 or 14-year-old kid. 10 years ago, cybersecurity industry was just a baby that was just born. And 20 years ago, it didn't even exist. It wasn't even a thought. So now we're dealing with a teenager. And that's sort of the bracket of where this sits, is that we're still dealing with a rambunctious teenager who is, starting trouble in every direction. And we have a lot of growing to do and a lot of maturity that needs to come about within the industry itself. But the problem is you can't really put the cybersecurity issue ahead of the functionality and performance of the technologies that we're talking about today, and that we'll be seeing in the future. Whenever you really put cybersecurity in front of the functionality and performance of these technologies, you're going to affect them and affect them in a way that typically takes away functionality and performance. So it's a matter of balancing that. And again, a lot of that has to do with, really coming to a place where we all agree on what is important to us all on a global scale when it comes to the issue of security.
Wow. The one thing I love about you guys is the honesty. And I'm sure that anybody listening is truly going to appreciate you guys giving honest answers and not giving what the world wants to know. There are so many times that we talk to people and they say, no, we are ready. No, our company is the best. We can provide 100% security. And the one thing that I know about you, Ralph, and that is why I am so happy to know you and that you're always honest, is that you're probably one of the only people in the world when it comes to cybersecurity that actually has the balls to say, no, we're not there yet. And it's going to be quite hard. And no, cybersecurity is not a 100% guarantee. So definitely thank you for that. And this brings me now to you, Mike, as the business advisor, entrepreneur working with Fortune 500 companies. And as an investor, investment is definitely your game. And one of the challenges of the companies face is the amount of R&D, the amount of money they put towards research and development. So what are your views? Why is it important for companies to have that dedicated budget now towards emerging technologies or even cybersecurity, just like Ralph said?
Mm. Okay, yeah, of course, investment in R&D, it is a must-have. If it comes to technology itself or product innovation, but I see a huge space for improvement, because this classy understanding of investment into R&D it's just the first step, because we all do this from a company's point of view to achieve market success, and this is the hard part of the game. So to give you a number, just 72% of all new products do not meet their revenue targets. And this is, for me, it is a huge number. So the biggest challenge during that process is to create a real value proposition on one hand, and on the other hand, to find or identify the right business model to monetize that innovation or product or whatever. So how I said in the beginning, a solution is that companies need to go beyond their routine, beyond what they did all over the years. They need to foster experimentation because of this different approach in technology investments. And even when it sounds so simple, they need to think about how to create, deliver, and capture value for customers and from the customers. So it is a relationship. And in short, of course, a good budget for that is needed.
Okay, so I have kind of a follow-up question, a little bit, just like I had done with Ralph, based on what you just said, because obviously you've just put in the plate exactly what is needed, but from your perspective, where do you actually see that investment going over the next couple of years? Do you truly see companies stepping up now as the new decade begins? Or do you think they're still in that mindset of, oh, let's wait a couple of extra years, let's see what these technologies are doing, and then we will invest? Or do you think, you spoke earlier about a mindset shift, do you really think companies are truly getting it now? Or what industries are actually getting it and which ones are truly behind?
Oh, it's a good but also a complex question, because and there is no generic answer for it. Let me bring it a little bit down to earth. So from my point of view, it is absolutely the time to step up. Yeah? It's a clear yes. Because we are in 2020 now, and it is the new decade or the new year. It sounds like a great number, but when I look back, for example, I was in 2018 in touch with entrepreneurial shareholders of these typical medium-sized companies. This is the German backbone of the economy. And when I compare the discussions I had in 2016 and nowadays, not much has changed. Yeah, a lot of people, of course, they are aware of that they need to do something, but they are struggling. They're still struggling because where to start, how to go on. We have a lot of insecure in our environment. We have this typical topic at the moment on our desk, this Corona thing. This makes this increases the feeling of insecure. But on the other hand, yes, we need a clear yes, because with a view into the future, there are many reasons why companies to increase their investments. Yeah? On the one hand, we have increased market participation. On the other hand, it's about trend matching, and even cost management benefits could be an outcome. Let me give you an example, because innovation that gained through research can actually work to reduce costs through efficient production processes or more efficient products. So R&D helps a company not just to follow the market, but stay ahead of it. And this is a must-have, isn't it?
Thank you so much for that, Mike. That was actually very insightful and once again, very truthful, which is what I love about you guys. Now, this brings me to you, Edwin. There is all this talk about artificial intelligence and the 5G word has been around for the last 2, 3 years. So, as the Chief Digital Transformation Officer at Huawei, how do you think AI and 5G are changing what we do and what we will do on a global level? How do you see that changing the digital transformation game?
Wow, that's quite a question. Again, um, I, I think we're talking about experience, to be honest. User experience and the experience in the usage. I think that's where it sits when it comes to what we do and what we will do. Um, the way traffic, road traffic, logistics services, cargo, trucks, and what have you, will look in the future. Will create a new experience, a user experience. The way your car, if you have one, if you ever have one again, as an owner, I mean, you go to a garage or to a dealer or wherever, and you select one, right? One of the largest electronic vehicles manufacturers in the world, from Mr. Elon Musk, has already a complete new platform of how and where the user experience is completely changed when it comes to purchasing a car. And then in return, it was said that this particular car is not even a car, right? It's a tablet on wheels. So imagine that. So I think the dominating part sits with the user experience and the experience in usage. What 5G is able to do is change the experience without maybe even us knowing that it is changing. Because the device that you have today is the replacement of the device that you had last year or last week if it was broken, or last month or 2 years ago. Same for your computer, your tablet, your PC. Anything you have now is of the latest and the greatest, but is not another form factor, right? Your smartphone today looks the same as it looked 10 years ago or 12 or 15 years ago, but your smartphone today is so completely different from your smartphone 10 years ago. The computing power, graphics, the not even artificial intelligence, but the augmented reality, playing a game on your phone today versus playing maybe even the same game on a similar device 10 years ago is already completely changed. So I think that's where predominantly the change will sit, and that's where things like 5G and AI are able to facilitate that gradually and intuitively.
Definitely, and you're spot on, Edwin. And I think the key here, and based off what we've been saying so far, is that we just need to embrace the technologies that are coming. There is definitely a lot of value into each of them. It is impossible for us to discuss all of them today. I'll definitely be talking to you guys individually for more videos because we have so much to talk. But now this brings me to you, Ralph. We spoke about it earlier, and we said, and based on what Edwin said, online security is paramount. And again, we've got all these buzzwords coming and all these emerging technologies. So from your perspective, what would you say right now that are the top emerging technologies that can put our online security at risk? The ones that right now don't have that much cybersecurity protection from your experience?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's all a matter of, like I said, the functionality and the performance, and then obviously security. So most of the, what I like to call bleeding edge technologies, we have all this cutting edge. Cutting edge is what's in our hands already, really, and bleeding edge is the stuff that's being developed and used in very small environments and tested. So, obviously things like all of this machine learning and AI and all of these type of things that we're talking about are things that use more and more data. that will collect more and more data. And so all of these technologies really are a risk, along with any one of these things that comes to us as a convenience. Typically, cybersecurity is an issue that's going to be dealt with after the fact. The first rule of business is to get it to market. So it's going to be something that we deal with after market, right? If we look at even historically speaking, we are reactive. And as much as we can throw the word proactive out there, the truth is we can't be proactive in what we don't know is a risk yet. And especially the things that we don't know. So there are going to be issues that come up with all of these emerging technologies that are going to be very similar in the sense of cybersecurity. It's a matter of how that data is being used, and are we aware that that data is being used? The truth is, right now we've already passed that. We're beyond that. Most people's data is available in some way to someone or to many ones, and we're unaware of it until we are. And when we're aware of it, it's too late. It's been a breach of some sort, and that's when we become aware of the issues. So it's not to say that one emerging technology is more or less secure than the other. All of these things are going to raise issues that we have yet to really fully understand or address as it stands.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And now I've got 3 questions left for you guys, and it's kind of gonna be more of a round robin so that you guys get to give me your insights on this one. And the first one is, what are some of the main challenges of emerging technologies? And I want a different perspective. So from an investor and entrepreneur, from yourself, Edwin, from the Huawei perspective, and of course, you, Ralph, it will be from that cybersecurity. So let's start with you, Edwin. What would you say are some of those main challenges, and how can society maybe overcome some of them?
Well, I think rules and regulations and policies would be something that pops up in my mind. I often say that, you know, we cannot solve the problems of tomorrow with technology of today, because whatever we have today does not fit in it. And I also liked what Ralph said, you know, about the proactive and the reactive part. We cannot be proactive on the parts that we don't know. If there is something out there that's going to be developed today by one of the brightest brains in the world, it's not there yet because it's still in the brain of one of the brightest brains in the world, but it comes out tomorrow. And then the regulation of today, the policies and the rules of today don't match that. I think that is a challenge, a clear challenge. The second challenge that comes out of that, I think, is where we try to convert or try to change some of the policies of today and make it fit something of tomorrow. In that respect, I'd like to say probably it doesn't make sense to try and do that. You know, if you think about it, it probably makes more sense to just look at what is at hand and create something for that. Or, even better, if we're able to do that, what Guy Kawasaki used to say, or still says actually, let's jump a curve, maybe 2 curves. Let's think a little bit further away from where we are. Let's just start clean and think about anything that we can imagine that would probably fit very nicely, and let's create a mutual understanding for that. And out of that mutual understanding, maybe things come out on paper. A mutual understanding in my vocabulary and the way I use it in my meetings with government officials and business leaders and customers and partners, when I support them in their digital journey, often is about, let's sit down and create a mutual understanding first. Let's put that on paper. And then let's call that paper a memorandum of understanding, which is not a piece of paper that we sign off and goes into a drawer and we never see it again, but this piece of paper now, this memorandum of understanding now, which is built on a mutual understanding that we have in how to move forward, on what to do and what to do first and what not to do, probably also could have an understanding on a rule or a regulation or a policy for it. And if so, then that mutual understanding converts into a memorandum of understanding, becomes a travel guide, because we're on a journey. We're not going somewhere. We're not towards a destination. We're on a journey. We're on a path to move higher up the value chain. As I said before, the intelligent cities are, or smart cities, if you like, are a platform that links programs and initiatives that will help move parts of that city higher up the value chain. It's a journey, but it's not ended when it reached a certain point higher up the value chain. It's continuing to improve and to reach points higher up the evolving and ever evolving value chain. So that's one part. The last part I'd like to say about this basically sits with the integration and the ability to pull up what really fits and what works well and what we just can't get rid of or shouldn't get rid of because it's perfect. It's beautiful as it is. And we're not going to leave that behind, or we're going to overrule that, right? We need to have it. We have to have it. So the ability to integrate, to coexist, to interoperate without bias, I think those are the two challenges that are, well, at least they bother me the most.
Wow, that is very insightful. Let's see how my Flache can follow that answer, because I've got the same one for you. But from your perspective, what do you see some of those main challenges? You know, as an investor, as an entrepreneur, what do you think companies see as the main challenges?
Yeah, I think the challenges are very versatile and depends on let's call it two main parts or main areas. On the one hand, the technology, and on the other hand, the human being. So let me give you an example. So tech itself, if it's digitally connected, it bears the risk, of cybersecurity, to give you just one example. And I'm sure that Ralph knows a lot of more than I can answer now to this question, but just to give an example. On the other hand, AI, artificial intelligence, works with tons of data, and there is a big advantage to deal with these tons of data. But on the other hand, we have these different regions, different countries, different regulations and policies, like Edwin mentioned, and this bears this privacy risk. So this is another challenge I see. And to stay at AI, this is one of the biggest challenges that I see is the acceptance of this new technology, because AI makes people nervous. So when I remember my discussions with team members, with CEOs, with CIOs, even with a facility manager of a company, it doesn't matter. It's all about the human being. AI this technology makes people nervous. Can I trust the technology? What's this happen in the background? I don't know. And of course, the number one, it is a job killer. But these are always, from my point of view, prejudgments, because there is a lack of information and there is a lack of knowledge. And this brings me to the important point: how to solve these challenges. So first, we need to create transparency. Many companies started to create transparency, and we need still more improvement to do this. And Edwin mentioned it. We are on a journey. It's an ongoing process. This is not a project that starts here and ends here. It is an ongoing process over the next years. So secondly, we need to educate people, because we are not in this physical world. If you invest in a campus, you can see a big building, for example, or machines or whatever. Now we're in the virtual world. You cannot touch a cloud. Cannot smell AI, whatever. So we need to educate people. What is the influence? What is happening in the background, and all this stuff. And thirdly, we need to increase the collaboration for responsible advancement. So, and then we will be able to tackle these challenges and to drive improvement of the situation, and I'm sure we're on the right way.
Wow, another insightful answer. And that brings me to you, Ralph, which is pretty much a follow-up on what you said earlier. But yes, what are some of those main challenges that you see of emerging technologies? Let's go outside of cybersecurity, of course. What else do you see?
Well, again, this is really a matter, especially around the issue of cybersecurity, and you've heard me say this before. I think what we have to really drive home and change is the idea that this is a matter of technology being a problem. No, it doesn't matter what the emerging technology is. It's a human problem. It's really not a technological problem. We have many technologies to accomplish many things, but where does it make sense, and what are we okay with doing? Technology should work for us. It's not us working for technology. So the issue here is one of safety when it comes to the issue of quote unquote cybersecurity, because security is a big word that actually encompasses many others, and the right word here is safety. As we deploy and use these technologies, how do we ensure that they are safe and that we are safer in using those technologies? So it's really that security has other elements like availability of these technologies. So it's a matter of changing everyone's mindset from that of things are secure. There's no such thing as 100% security. Excuse me. Not in the real world, not in the physical world, and not in the virtual world. So it's really a matter of focusing and shifting our mindset to the issue of making things safer to operate with, and that even in a situation where something has been compromised, things can still be available, and services can still be available to the users, and that they can still be used in a safe fashion, a safe way. That is really the biggest concern, no matter what the technology is. And to make people realize that this issue of safety is not one of just purely the technology and the code, but the people itself using the technology, that they understand this more and more. So awareness and obviously education is key here. And it's a tough one because people don't want to take responsibility of any kind for the technologies they use. They just want to use it. They don't really care that much. In fact, this issue of cybersecurity, like I mentioned, is one that people tend to shy away from or run away from than they want to actually address it. If somebody came to me, and it happens all the time, well, how can I be more secure? And I start explaining certain things. Sure, there's technologies and tools that will allow everyone to be more secure. The truth is they're not written for you and me as a consumer. They're written for you and me as tech guys and gals. So it's not usable. Back to something that Edwin had said there is, the user experience of security and safety has been, created and written for the nerds, not for the consumers. So consumers get overwhelmed by these issues. They don't want to deal with them. They just want the convenience without paying the price or understanding what the price is. So it's just a matter of getting people to understand and become part of the solution.
That is a great answer. I wish we could continue this and have a full day, but obviously we need to bring this to an end. So I have one last question for everybody, and this is going to be, what is the one key takeaway that you would like people to know about emerging technologies? And I'm going to start with you, Mike. So from your perspective, what is the one key takeaway that you would like, specifically for the C-suite and the decision makers, to know about emerging technologies?
One key takeaway is this. This is a little bit different, but I see a red bond between three important points. Yeah, simply be open. Yeah, especially for decision makers or C-level executives from traditional sectors. Yeah, all is new, but be open to it. Yeah, there is a huge potential. There are many opportunities. Explore new ways of value creation, and the focus is on value creation for your customer and your company. And this, you can then this to go new ways or foster experimentation. So, and last but not least, invest in R&D to stay ahead of your market and stay or be relevant in the future.
Thank you, Mike. Now, Ralph, what is your one key takeaway you would like people to know about security in emerging technologies?
That's simple. I think it's ask questions. Ask a lot of questions. The more questions you ask, the more that these technologies will be safer. Like I said, and communicate. It's in a world of communication, and we're all in this super connected environment. We still are not the greatest at communicating properly. So, it's important. Especially with it is perceived that this whole issue of security is one of secrecy and keeping secrets without really realizing that the whole thing that exists, that the internet was never intended to keep secrets. It was always created for the purpose of communicating in a in a transparent way. So we're most of this is not understood. So it is assumed that we are, again, doing the right things. But the best way to ensure that we're doing the right things is to ask.
Thank you so much for that, Ralph. That's 100% true. And Edwin, same to you. What is your one key takeaway that you would like people to know about emerging technologies?
I think the key thing to take away is that whether it's emerging or not, technology allows us to do better what we already do best. I think that is a key takeaway. It allows us to do better what we already do best.
That is a very powerful punchline. I love it. I'm sure that will be my tagline for you for promoting this video. And from my perspective, guys, is definitely educate yourselves and don't trust everything you see online when it comes to technology. Trust requires time. And as Yoda would say, patience is virtue. So guys, thank you so much. Mike Flache, Ralph Echemendia, Edwin Diender, and myself, Elise Quevedo. Thank you for listening to us. We couldn't do it in person, so we bring it to you online. Take notes, ask us questions. I'm pretty sure I will talk to you guys again very soon. So to everybody else, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.